My DNA test said I had a twin sister. My parents swear I was born alone, but someone keeps using my toothbrush. The toothbrush was wet when I picked it up Thursday morning, not damp from sitting overnight, but dripping wet like someone had just finished brushing their teeth and put it back in the holder. I lived alone in a studio apartment in Brooklyn with deadbolts on the door and window locks my parents had insisted on when they paid my security deposit, emphasizing safety in the city where a 24-year-old woman living alone needed to be careful. The building required a key fob for entry, my floor needed a second fob, and my apartment had a deadbolt I religiously engaged every single night before bed. Nobody should have been able to get inside, yet here I was holding a soaking wet toothbrush under the bathroom light, examining bristles that were splayed out differently than I remembered, bent at odd angles like someone had brushed too aggressively. A single long black hair was caught between two bristles, at least 8 inches long, and my hair had been cut into a pixie 3 weeks ago. I pulled the hair free and held it up, my stomach tightening with unease I couldn't name, then walked through my studio checking everything methodically while my heart hammered against my ribs. The window was locked from the inside. The deadbolt was engaged exactly as I'd left it. Nothing else seemed disturbed at all. My laptop sat on the desk untouched. My phone was charging on the nightstand. The cash in my wallet hadn't been taken, and yet someone had definitely been here because that toothbrush had been used by someone who wasn't me. I threw it away and bought a new one on my way to work, spending the morning at my digital marketing job creating social media content for a mattress company while trying not to think about the intrusion. By lunch, I'd almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing, that maybe I'd used it half asleep and forgotten, that the hair was from before my haircut and had been stuck in the bristles for weeks. When I got home that evening, my apartment smelled different. Not bad, but unfamiliar. Like someone else's shampoo or perfume, something floral I'd never owned. I stood in the doorway with my key still in my hand, breathing in that scent while examining my studio, which looked exactly as I'd left it with the bed made and dishes washed and laptop closed. Someone had been here again, and I knew it with absolute certainty, the same way I knew my own name. And when I called the building superintendent, he came up and checked the locks and examined the window frame before shrugging helplessly. The locks are fine. No signs of forced entry anywhere. Are you sure you're not just forgetting things because stress can do that to people? I wanted to argue, but what evidence did I have except a wet toothbrush I'd already thrown away, a smell that was already dissipating, and a feeling that wouldn't hold up to any kind of scrutiny? The superintendent left, and I ordered Thai food, eating pad Thai while scrolling through my phone and trying to distract myself from the creeping paranoia. A notification popped up from Ancestry DNA telling me my results were ready, and I'd sent in the test kit 6 weeks ago mostly out of curiosity since my parents had always been frustratingly vague about our family history. My mom would say we have relatives in the Midwest somewhere when I asked, and my dad would mention that his father was from Pennsylvania maybe, their haziness about the family tree never seeming suspicious, but just normal generational disconnect. I clicked the notification and logged into the site, finding the ethnic breakdown exactly what I expected with 52% Irish and 31% German and 17% Eastern European. But below that, in the DNA relatives section, was a name I didn't recognize at all, and the relationship designation made my blood run cold. Alexis Laurent, close family, possible twin sister. The site's algorithm estimated we shared approximately 50% of our DNA, which was consistent with full siblings. And the age listed on her public profile was 24, exactly my age. Born July 3rd, 1999, my birthday. I clicked on her profile with shaking hands, and the face staring back at me was my own face. Not similar or close, but identical in every way that mattered. Same sharp jawline, same wide-set dark eyes, same slightly crooked nose I'd always hated, and her hair was long and straight the way mine had been before my impulsive pixie cut. She was smiling in the photo while standing in front of what looked like a small restaurant, wearing a leather jacket I didn't own, but absolutely would have bought if I'd seen it in a store. I took a screenshot and sent it to my parents in a group text asking, "Who is this? Why does she look exactly like me? Why does the DNA test say she's my twin?" The response from my mom came within seconds, and it wasn't an explanation or a dismissal, but 5 words that confirmed my worst fear. "We need to talk, not over text. Can you come home this weekend?" If this was a mistake or a crazy coincidence, my mom would have said so immediately, would have laughed it off or made a joke about everyone having a doppelganger somewhere in the world. Instead, she wanted to talk in person, which meant this was real and serious and something they'd been hiding from me. I called her immediately, but she didn't answer. Called my dad and got sent straight to voicemail, then sent another text saying, "Tell me right now, or I'm calling this Alexis person and asking her myself." My mom's response took 5 minutes that felt like hours. "Please don't contact her. Come home Saturday and we'll explain everything. I promise." I didn't sleep at all that night, just lay in bed staring at the ceiling while trying to piece together scenarios that made sense. Adoption was the only explanation that fit. My parents had adopted me and never told me, but that didn't explain why there was a twin or why we'd been separated. I got up at 3 in the morning and went through my apartment looking for proof of my birth, finding my birth certificate in a folder in my desk drawer. Mother, Caroline Ann Whitmore. Father, David Joseph Whitmore. Place of birth, St. Mary's Hospital, Rochester, New York. Date, July 3rd, 1999. It looked completely legitimate with an official seal and registrar signature, but I knew from podcasts that birth certificates could be amended after adoption, that if it happened quickly, the new parents' names would be listed as if they'd been there all along. I put it back and opened my laptop to search for Alexis Laurent on social media, finding her Facebook immediately with a public profile filled with photos. There she was at a farmer's market holding sunflowers, at a concert crowd surfing with her mouth open laughing, at a park doing a handstand, and in every single photo I saw my own face and expressions and mannerisms. She had my smile with one corner lifting slightly higher than the other, had my habit of tilting her head in selfies, even had my hands with long fingers and the same slightly crooked pinky from a childhood break. But her life was completely different from mine, based on what I could see from her posts about restaurant work and community college classes, and roommates in what looked like a cramped apartment in Queens. Her friends called her Alex in the comments, asked about shifts at work, tagged her in memes about being broke. My life was digital marketing and a solo apartment in Park Slope and brunch with friends who worked in consulting. Completely different worlds, but the same face and DNA and birthday. I sent her a friend request at 4 a.m. without thinking it through, too wired to consider whether it was a good idea, then sent a message saying, "I know this sounds insane, but I think we might be twins. I did a DNA test and it matched us as close family. Can we talk?" I hit send before I could second-guess myself, and my phone buzzed 30 seconds later, but it wasn't a Facebook message, it was a text from an unknown number. "I've been waiting for you to figure it out, Mira." The text was followed by a photo that made my heart stop completely. A photo of me asleep in my bed taken from the doorway of my apartment, and the timestamp said it was from last night while I was sleeping. I dropped my phone like it had burned me, and it clattered on the hardwood floor with the screen still glowing with that image of my unconscious face. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pick it back up, and I checked every lock again, finding the window secure and the deadbolt engaged from the inside, which meant whoever took that photo had gotten in and out without leaving any trace. I called 911 and the operator answered, asking, "What's your emergency?" And I told her someone broke into my apartment and photographed me sleeping. They just texted it to me, and I don't know if they're still here. She kept me on the line while dispatching officers, and I huddled in the corner with my back against the wall, where I could see both the door and window, holding a kitchen knife with trembling hands. The police arrived 12 minutes later and cleared my tiny studio in less than a minute because there was nowhere to hide in 400 square feet. Then they examined the locks and window and fire escape. No signs of forced entry anywhere, one officer said. "You said the deadbolt was locked from the inside when you got home and nothing was stolen, just the toothbrush thing, and now this photo. Can you trace the number?" The officer looked at his partner with an expression I recognized as skepticism. "Without evidence of forced entry, investigate." I showed them Alexis's Facebook profile and the DNA results and explained everything while watching their expressions shift from skepticism to confusion to something like pity. "This woman looks exactly like you," the younger officer said, scrolling through photos. And I explained that she's my twin, and I think she's the one doing this. "But why would your twin sister break into your apartment?" he asked, and I had to admit I didn't know, because I'd only learned she existed 3 hours ago. They filed a report and suggested I change my locks and install a camera, said to call if it happened again, then left me alone with my paranoia and that photo on my phone. I texted back asking, "Why are you doing this?" and the response came immediately. "Because I want to know what it feels like to be you. You got everything and I got nothing. It's time to switch." My stomach dropped and I called my parents. My mom answering on the first ring with a voice thick with sleep or tears. "Mira, honey, we were going to tell you this weekend," she said. "But I told her to tell me now because someone's been breaking into my apartment. Someone who looks exactly like me. Someone who says she's my twin." There was a long silence before my mom whispered that her name is Alexis. "You were born together. We only adopted you." The story came out in fragments with my mom crying through most of it, and my dad taking over when she couldn't continue, explaining that they'd been unable to have children after years of fertility treatments that bankrupted them emotionally and financially. They'd turned to private adoption and been connected with a young pregnant woman who was clear about her terms. She wanted to keep one baby and give one up because she was having twins but couldn't afford both. The agency had chosen which baby went where, and my parents met me when I was 6 hours old, signed papers and paid fees and brought me home to Rochester. The adoption was closed with no contact allowed, and they'd been told the birth mother wanted it that way, had been told I was born alone, and the twin story was something the mother invented to cope. They'd believed it or wanted to believe it and never told me about the adoption because they wanted me to feel fully theirs. "Because you are ours," my mom sobbed. "You are our daughter. We raised you. We love you. Biology doesn't matter." But biology did matter because somewhere a woman had kept my twin sister and raised her in poverty while I grew up in a comfortable suburb with college funds and family vacations and every advantage. My dad's voice was strained when he said they didn't know she'd find me, that the adoption was supposed to be sealed, but DNA tests had changed everything and people found each other now. I asked what our birth mother's name was, and they said they didn't know because the agency kept everything confidential. All they knew was she was young and struggling financially. They'd erased my birth name and my birth mother and my twin, built my entire identity on a lie that was now breaking into my apartment, and threatening to replace me. I hung up and saw that Alexis had accepted my friend request and written back, "Finally, I was starting to think you'd never do the test. We need to meet." I typed back that yes, we needed to meet, and her response was instant. Saturday, 2 p.m. Golden Dragon Restaurant in Flushing. I'll be the one who looks like you. Don't tell anyone. Not your parents or the police. Just you and me. If you bring anyone, I'll disappear and you'll never get answers. I should have told someone, but instead I agreed, typing back that I'd be there. Then spent the next 2 days in a paranoid fog. I bought a camera doorbell and installed it pointing at my apartment door. Bought a window alarm that would scream if anyone opened it. Slept with lights on and a knife under my pillow. Friday night at 2:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert, and I pulled up the camera feed to watch a figure in a black hoodie approach my door and try the handle, finding it locked, then just standing there for a full minute, staring directly at the camera. She pulled back her hood and smiled at the lens, and it was my face, my smile, but the expression was wrong and too wide and hungry in a way that made my skin crawl. She blew a kiss at the camera and walked away while I sat frozen in my bed, knowing she could get in anytime she wanted, and my locks and alarms were just theater. Saturday morning, I took the subway to Flushing and found the Golden Dragon restaurant in a strip mall between a nail salon and a phone repair shop, arriving at 1:50 and sitting in a booth near the back where I could watch the door. She walked in at exactly 2 p.m. wearing jeans and a sweater I'd seen on her Facebook, her long black hair in a ponytail, and she moved like me and walked like me and hesitated at the hostess stand the same way I would have. When she saw me, her face split into that too wide smile, and she slid into the booth across from me saying, "Hi, Mira. It's so nice to finally meet you. I mean, really meet you, not just watch you sleep." Her voice was my voice with the same pitch and cadence and slight uptick at the end of sentences, and hearing my own voice from someone else's mouth made me want to crawl out of my skin. I asked why she was doing this, breaking in and taking my things and scaring me, and she tilted her head while studying me like I was an interesting specimen. "I'm not taking your things," she said. "I'm just trying them on. Your life and your apartment and your toothbrush. I wanted to see what it felt like to be the chosen one." I told her she was chosen because our birth mother kept her, and she laughed bitterly before explaining that our mother only kept her because she couldn't afford to give up both of us. "The adoption agency paid your parents $50,000 for you," she said. "That's how much you were worth. I was worth nothing. So I got to stay in a one-bedroom apartment with a mother who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't keep the lights on half the time. $50,000 my parents had bought me like property while her mother took that money to survive and raise the daughter she'd kept out of desperation rather than choice." I asked what happened to our birth mother, and Alexis's expression flickered with raw grief before she said their mother died when she was 16 from ovarian cancer with no health insurance and no money for treatment. By the time they diagnosed it, the cancer was stage 4 and she lasted 6 months, and Alexis had dropped out of high school to take care of her. "She told me about you before she died," Alexis said, "about the adoption and the choice she made. She said she was sorry and thought you'd have a better life." The grief in her voice was real, and so was the anger underneath it, and I didn't know what to say because I'm sorry, felt inadequate, and I didn't ask to be adopted, felt defensive. I asked what she wanted from me, and she leaned forward with her eyes locked on mine, saying she wanted to know what it was like to be me, to have parents who could afford my rent and a college degree, and a life that wasn't a constant scramble to survive. "You got everything I was supposed to have," she said, "and I want to understand why you deserve it, and I don't. I want to try on your life and see if it fits me better." The way she said it sent ice down my spine, and I realized she'd been planning this for months, breaking in and learning my routine and studying me. "Since I found out about you 6 months ago," she confirmed. "I did the DNA test specifically to find you. Mom told me your birthday and your parents' names from the adoption papers she kept. I searched for Caroline and David Whitmore in Rochester and found your Facebook linked to theirs. You post everything, Mira, where you work and live and eat and who you hang out with. You made it so easy to learn everything about you." 6 months of surveillance while I'd felt vaguely watched and dismissed it as paranoia. 6 months of her inserting herself into my life in ways I'd attributed to forgetfulness or coincidence. I told her she needed to stop because it was illegal and terrifying, but her expression hardened and she said I was terrified while she'd grown up wondering why she wasn't good enough to keep. "Try watching your mother die because she couldn't afford treatment with the money she got from selling your sister," she said, her voice rising enough that other customers glanced over. "Try working 3 jobs to afford a room in a basement with 4 other people while your twin posts Instagram stories from brunch in Park Slope, and then tell me I should stop wanting what should have been mine." I stood up and said this conversation was over, that if she came near me or my apartment again, I'd get a restraining order. She leaned back with that cold smile and said, "Good luck proving it's me and not you. We have the same DNA, remember, the same face. I could tell police I'm you and you're me, and who would they believe?" I walked out with my heart hammering, because she was right. If she wanted to swap our identities, she had everything she needed after 6 months of study. I went to a lawyer Monday morning and paid $300 for a consultation that yielded useless advice. Document everything, file for a restraining order, change your locks, but identity theft between identical twins is nearly impossible to prosecute without fingerprints or witnesses. That week, small things started going wrong in ways that felt coordinated and deliberate. My work email password stopped working and IT reset it. confused because someone had changed it from an IP address in Queens. My credit card declined at a coffee shop, and when I called the bank, they said I'd reported it stolen earlier and requested a new one sent to an address in Flushing, except I'd never called. My gym membership was canceled, my therapy appointment was rescheduled without my knowledge, my Netflix password changed, each incident small enough to explain as a glitch but together forming a clear pattern. Alexis was systematically dismantling my life piece by piece, replacing me in small ways while I scrambled to undo damage. I filed for a restraining order with a hearing scheduled 3 weeks out and spent that time documenting everything, taking screenshots of changed passwords and photos of camera feeds and records of fraudulent calls. 2 weeks after our restaurant meeting, I came home to find my apartment door unlocked. Not broken or forced, but simply unlocked. And the camera I'd installed had been disabled with a piece of tape over the lens. I should have called police, but instead I pushed the door open and went inside to find everything rearranged subtly, my books organized by color instead of author, my clothes hung facing the opposite direction, my photos moved and cleaned and shifted. Someone had been here for hours, methodically changing everything just enough to be noticeable, and my toothbrush was wet again. On my desk, the laptop was open to my work email. Logged in as me with the inbox organized into folders I hadn't created and draft emails I hadn't written sitting ready to send. She'd been answering my work emails and doing my job and being me, learning to replace me from the inside out. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your life fits me better than it fits you. You're so stressed all the time, so worried about doing everything right. I could do this in my sleep. Maybe I should. Maybe you should go be poor in Queens for a while and see how you like it. I called my parents and told them everything, the escalating break-ins and identity theft and systematic replacement, and my dad wanted to drive down immediately while my mom wanted me to move home. I told them I couldn't run from my own life because that's what she wanted, for me to disappear so she could slide into my place, and I wasn't going to let that happen. But I did start staying with my friend Julia, sleeping on her couch in Bed-Stuy, and only going to my apartment during daylight with someone else present. Alexis didn't show up on camera again, but I could feel her presence in the apartment, which now smelled like her perfume, her scent absorbed into the space from frequent visits. The restraining order hearing was on a Wednesday, and I showed up with my lawyer and a folder of evidence and sick certainty it wouldn't matter. Alexis showed up wearing a dress I owned, one I'd bought online 3 months ago, and her hair was cut shorter and styled exactly like my old haircut before I'd gone pixie. We sat on opposite sides of the courtroom as mirror images, and I watched the judge's face as he looked from me to her and back, seeing his confusion and discomfort at this unprecedented situation. My lawyer presented everything, the camera footage and bank records and documented break-ins, but Alexis's public defender argued it was all circumstantial with no fingerprints placing his client at the scene. The woman in the footage could be anyone, the fraudulent calls could be anyone, and in fact his client had evidence suggesting I was harassing her, not the other way around. He presented screenshots of Facebook messages I'd supposedly sent to Alexis, threatening messages and angry messages accusing her of ruining my life, except I'd never sent them because she'd fabricated them and deleted them after taking screenshots. The judge looked exhausted and said this was highly unusual, that without clear evidence of who was perpetrating what he couldn't issue a restraining order, and his recommendation was that we both seek mediation and stay away from each other voluntarily. Outside the courthouse, Alexis walked past me close enough that our shoulders almost touched, close enough that I heard her whisper, "I start at your office Monday. I got your job. You're fired." I turned, but she was already walking away with my gait and my posture, perfectly mimicking me. I called my boss immediately, and he sounded confused, saying, "Mira, I'm looking at you right now. You're sitting at your desk." I told him I was outside the courthouse after a hearing, but he insisted I'd been there all morning, that we'd had the team meeting at 9, and I'd presented the new campaign. She'd gone to my office and attended my meeting and done my presentation, while everyone believed she was me. Because why wouldn't they, when she looked and sounded and acted exactly like me? I ran to my office in Midtown and burst through the doors to see her sitting at my desk, typing on my computer, wearing my clothes, and my coworkers glanced over with confused faces. My boss stood up from his office asking what was going on and why there were 2 of me, and Alexis turned in my chair with that smile. "This is my twin sister," she said. "She's been having mental health issues. I'm so sorry she came here. I've been trying to get her help, but she keeps insisting she's me." The room tilted as she told them I was the imposter and I was crazy. And I pulled out my wallet to show my ID and prove who I was. But my work badge was gone, and my driver's license was gone, and my credit cards were gone. Everything that proved my identity had been taken from my wallet and replaced with nothing. Alexis held up a badge with her photo but my name, and my boss looked between us with concern before saying we both needed to leave. Security escorted us out, and on the sidewalk Alexis turned to me and explained how easy that was, asking me to imagine what happens when she calls my parents claiming to be me, when she accesses my bank account and social media and apartment lease. "You built your whole identity on things I can take," she said, and I lunged at her without thinking or planning, just needing to hurt her and break that perfect mirror. She dodged easily, like she'd known I'd react that way, like she'd planned for it, and a crowd formed with someone filming. Alexis held up her hands defensively and said, "Please, someone help. My sister is having an episode. She's not well." The crowd saw two identical women with one calm and concerned, and one wild-eyed and aggressive, and they saw a clear victim and clear aggressor. I ran until my lungs burned and the city blurred around me, ending up at Julia's apartment pounding on her door until she pulled me inside. I explained everything through gasping breaths, and Julia made me tea and called a lawyer who specialized in identity theft. The lawyer's name was Vanessa Okoye, and she listened to everything before laying out my options, explaining this was complicated because traditional identity theft remedies didn't apply when someone was physically replacing me. But we have avenues, she said. First, we establish you as legitimate Mira Whitmore through documentation predating her involvement, birth certificate and childhood records and school transcripts and employment history, building a paper trail proving continuous identity. Second, we prove she's using fraudulent documents like that forged work badge. And third, we prosecute her for trespassing and harassment and fraud because criminal charges will stick even if civil court struggles. But you need to understand this will take months, she said. And in the meantime, you need to protect yourself by changing everything. New bank accounts and passwords and address if possible. Make it so she can't access any part of your life. I moved in with Julia officially and closed my bank accounts and opened new ones at a different bank, changed every password to something she couldn't guess, filed a police report detailing everything. The detective assigned to my case was sympathetic, but realistic, saying this would be tough to prosecute, and I needed to catch her in the act of being me somewhere I could prove I wasn't, needed video evidence and witnesses and something concrete. I set a trap by telling my parents I was going home to Rochester for Thanksgiving and posting about it publicly on social media, making it very visible. Then I stayed in the city watching my apartment through the camera feed, and she showed up Tuesday night letting herself in with a copied key and moving through my space like it was hers. I called the detective directly, and police arrived within 10 minutes, meeting me outside before we went up together to find her sitting on my bed wearing my pajamas and looking through my photo albums. She looked up at me with no surprise or fear, just that unsettling smile saying, "Hi sis, miss me." The officers arrested her for criminal trespass and identity fraud and took her out in handcuffs, but even then she was calm and told me I could have my life back because she didn't want it anymore. "I tried it on and it doesn't fit right," she said. "Too much pressure and too much performance. You can keep your exhausting little existence." I thought I'd feel victorious, but instead felt hollow watching her led away. The court case took 8 months with Alexis charged with criminal trespass and identity fraud and forgery and harassment, her public defender arguing diminished capacity due to trauma, while the prosecutor argued premeditation based on 6 months of planning. I testified along with my parents and boss and coworkers and Julia, building a timeline proving I'd been Mira Whitmore continuously for 24 years, while Alexis had been Alexis Laurent with a separate identity until she decided to take mine. She was convicted on all counts, and the judge sentenced her to 3 years in prison with mandatory psychiatric treatment, and before sentencing, she was allowed to make a statement. She looked directly at me and said she didn't hate me but hated what I represented, the choice our mother made and the money my parents paid and the life she could have had. "But you're right," she said. "I can't take your life because it was never mine to take. I just wanted to know what it felt like to be chosen. And now I know it's not actually that different from being left behind. You're just more comfortable while you suffer." My parents and I started family therapy to unpack the adoption and lies and decades of pretending biology didn't matter when it mattered more than anything, and they apologized and explained and justified while I worked toward forgiveness. I tried to find information about our birth mother, but the adoption records were sealed and the agency had closed, and Alexis had her name and story and memories while I had nothing but DNA and a shared face. I visited her once 6 months into her sentence, and we sat across from each other in the prison visitors' room, identical faces on opposite sides of a table, though we didn't look quite so identical anymore. Prison had changed her with weight gain from institutional food and a different haircut from prison barbers, and the haunted hunger in her eyes replaced by resignation. She asked why I came, and I said maybe because she was the only person who shared my exact DNA. Maybe because I felt guilty. Maybe because I wanted to understand. She laughed bitterly and told me not to feel guilty because neither of us chose our circumstances. We were both just consequences of someone else's impossible choice. Before I left, I asked if she'd do it differently if she could go back, and she thought for a long moment before saying no. She needed to know even if knowing destroyed everything. At least now she understood I wasn't special or better, but just luckier, and luck runs out eventually. I never visited again and legally changed my name to Mira Laurent Whitmore, hyphenated to honor both the family who raised me and the one I came from. A hybrid identity, acknowledging I was built from 2 histories and 2 choices. Alexis gets out in 2.5 years with good behavior, and will be required to move at least 100 miles away with no contact allowed, and I wonder if she'll comply or show up at my door again wanting to try on my life one more time. I sleep with deadbolts locked and window alarms active and my phone beside my pillow, but I also actually sleep now, which is more than I could do before, and the nightmares come less frequently while the paranoia has faded to vigilance. The DNA test still sits in my desk drawer, and I've never deleted my account or removed my results, sometimes logging in to look at that notification about Alexis Laurent, close family, possible twin sister, thinking about how one test and one curiosity led to the unraveling of everything I thought I knew. I wonder if ignorance would have been better, if I'd been happier not knowing I had a twin, or that I was adopted, or about the choice that split my life from hers. But then I look in the mirror and see both of us, the girl who got everything and the girl who got nothing. And I know the truth would have found me eventually because Alexis was always coming. She'd been coming since the day we were separated, and one of us was chosen and one was left, and the collision was inevitable. I just wish it had hurt less. My toothbrush is dry when I pick it up this morning, and the apartment smells like my shampoo and my coffee and my life. No ghosts or intruders, just me trying to build an identity that can't be stolen, because it's not based on things someone else can take, but on choices and values, and the person I decide to be every morning when I look in the mirror and see only my face looking back. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.